everyone. Welcome to Party Like a Marketer, the podcast dedicated to cannabis marketing, public relations, and authentic storytelling. I'm your host, Lisa Buffo, founder and CEO of Cannabis Marketing Association. You can connect with me on Instagram at LeeBuff and on Twitter at LeeBuff21. I'd love to hear from you. Today's conversation features Luna Stour, Chief Impact Officer at Icefire Vape Technology. With the master's from USF and a BA from UC Santa Cruz and nearly 2 decades of cannabis experience, she's known for her role in launching several California legacy brands like Jetty Extracts. An internationally recognized industry expert, Luna is featured on B2B panels, podcasts, summits, and consumer expos, and was named Cannabis Culture Advocate of the Year in 2021 by the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce. As a renowned thought leader in drug policy, Luna blends her knowledge of consumer markets with the passion for social and plant medicine justice and has been instrumental to local decriminalization measures and first-of-its-kind social equity initiatives. She serves as a judge for the esteemed Emerald Cup Awards, Mila the Hash Queen's Dabadoo Global Hash Competition, and HQ's Masters of Rosin Spannabis Cups. Learn more about her at lunastour.com. Luna, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure.
So I've known you for several years now, and we've had lots of conversations about cannabis marketing, the good, the bad, the ugly in the industry. We've known both of you. I've known you, you've known me through a few different roles, and we've seen marketing evolve in our local markets and nationally for a very long time now. So I'm excited to have this conversation with you and talk about the state of cannabis marketing and get into some insights for our audience as well. But first, can you introduce yourself? Tell the audience a little bit about Luna, who you are, how you got started, and then Icefire as well, and what the role of Chief Impact Officer is.
Yeah, so I'm really lucky to work at a company like Icefire that really values, social justice and environmental initiatives. It's something that's really important to our hearts personally, and in an industry where we're using electronics and a lot of disposables and things like that, we really need to be conscious of that. So as impact officer, I'm doing initiatives like trying to launch right now in Oklahoma. We're working on a recycling program for cartridges and disposables. And I go around the world on panels from Germany and Spain to, we just got back from Atlantic City and Oklahoma City, speaking on everything from consumption education to equity and social justice in the space, to advocacy of plant medicine, decriminalization, policy and compliance, all the way down to just good old-fashioned history of cannabis legalization in California and how we got here. So I'm really lucky to be able to have moved, I was VP of business development, moved into this role, and really I'm able to embody all the things that I really care about and are sacred to me in representation of this plant in the mainstream.
And when did you get started in cannabis?
Well, I'd like to say that I was in middle school because that's when we were smoking it and selling it. Everyone around us was growing it. So, 1996, I was in 6th grade, and we just had access to, the brownies and the stuff from the clubs that was coming from older brothers and sisters that were picking it up. And it was never considered a drug in our community. It was always just something that was around just like anything else. We saw alcohol as way more harmful. And so I was really lucky to go to UC Santa Cruz and get involved in Students for Sensible Drug Policy. And got into the drug war consciousness through the ACLU and different activities, working in prisons, worked in several different prisons around the Bay Area and in Santa Cruz and jails, really working on pre and post release services. And it really made me realize that the youth is where we need to go for these interventions. So I got into public school teaching, and I taught for about a decade in middle school and high school, English and Spanish, and really got to, see firsthand the impact of the war on drugs on the communities and on the children's and the schools and the systems. So, decided.
And that was in the Bay Area?
Yeah. So Berkeley and Hayward were the main places that I was teaching at that time. So very, these are urban areas with a lot of immigrant students, low income students, and, single parent homes and lack of generational wealth and things like that. So as we say in Oakland, there's $1 million blocks where the government's spending $1 million to incarcerate people. But if they had spent $1 million on programming for everyone on that block, we'd be in a much better place. So Yeah, it got me to Jetty Extracts in 2014. They hit me up. They, saw me at different clubs with I was repping for different brands, and they asked me to come on. So I ran sales for them for 5 years, did a little bit of marketing, and then decided to leave and do my own thing and started a marketing business myself, which I think you guys are the first panel I ever sat on in Oakland, the CMAs. It was really, really nice to kind of be in a room of other marketers who understood how important storytelling was around this plant and the kind of stigma that we have to deal with, and all the hurdles that we have to jump over and loopholes we have to find to just do basic business. So through that experience, I learned everything about retail, manufacturing, oil making, hash, testing, and ended up at Icefire, which really allows, folks to have access to good hardware to put their oil in. So it's been a wild ride, but really the through line is, plant medicine advocacy and really pushing the needle on normalization and removing the stigma so that we could treat this like a medicine, just like everything else.
And you're from California?
Yeah, born and raised right here in the East Bay area.
Awesome.
Just outside Oakland, California.
And Jetty's a California brand. So your lens, as far as how you were brought up in this space, is California, but more specifically East Bay.
Absolutely, yeah. So Icefire is based on Venice Beach in Los Angeles. So I get to have a little bit more of that insight now too, of how things run down there, because it really is like a different state altogether from Northern California, culturally, and financially, and everything.
That's very true. So, and you've transitioned recently from business development at Icefire to chief impact officer. So tell me a little bit about so you said that the through line there is around plant medicine and storytelling. Can you explore that a little bit more for me as far as what that means for marketers and how that impacts the industry? Like what would be the number one piece of advice you would tell cannabis marketers based on your experience and everything you've learned between Jetty and Icefire and in these various different roles?
It's kind of a holistic approach. It's like, have a really strong why, believe in it, have people on your team that believe in it. Don't just patchwork together something that you think would work for cannabis. You have to have real roots people, real suits people coming together and figuring out kind of how to professionalize. So the core and the DNA of your story and of your brand and of your service or whatever value proposition you have needs to be really solid to its core, where if something happens and there's bad weather, everyone's still grounded to, we work for this mission and this vision. And then from there, a lot of transparency and authenticity through how you roll that out, how you show up, that you have high integrity, that you make good relationships, that you're not just utilizing certain kind of fad marketing to try to get some clicks and then not really following through. That authenticity and transparency around how you operate really builds trust. And we're seeing that, a lack of trust in the marketplace and lack of loyalty is harming brands. So I would say that's a big part, moving through that. And then to close it up, really making sure that as you're moving through the space and you do have a name, that you hold that responsibility very highly. We had a case yesterday of a hash brand with almost 500,000 followers, probably 1 million followers between their multiple pages, posting a really demeaning photograph of a woman or being used as an object in context of an advertisement for this ad with just a off-color caption, and then defending it in the comments when people were saying they were offended that this was misogynistic, sexist marketing. A lot of upstanding women in the industry were really offended by it, and there was a lack of accountability and maturity in the response, which the cannabis industry is really good at calling people out, but then calling people back in, saying that this is something we don't like, but we recognize that we're all in this together. We're all a cannabis community. Let's see if you could do better. And then when people continue to double down on really bad behavior and really offensive, kind of visual harassment when it comes to when you're on your feed and you're following a company that's otherwise considered a somewhat respected brand in this space, it really prevents people from feeling safe who are in this space. This could be an off-color. That same brand, repurposed a civil rights leader's speech to compare it to cannabis rights. And a lot of people were concerned about the belittling of the African-American experience and things like that. So when there's a pattern or you're getting feedback or you're trying to push the edge on certain things, read the room. It's 2022, using sex to sell, memifying things that are insensitive. I'm not trying to be the PC police or like the cannabis Karen, but at the end of the day, we're really tired as women in the space seeing very low vibrational content used to uplift our voices or supposedly uplift this planet and our voices. It's not a healthy representation. So I'm really grateful that, you know, at Icefire, we have a lot of women on staff. We have a lot of folks of color on staff. We have people in positions of power and decision making that have, you know, a good heart and a good sense and are coming from a good place, and want to make a positive impact, and not use bullying or, you know, kind of schoolyard humor to get likes and clout, because in this space, we really are very sensitive to that. And you will get, you know, kind of blacklisted in some ways from working with people if they feel like it's a liability, a cultural liability and a business liability to be associated with a brand who is ended up having to delete that post. And I'm sure that that social media manager no longer has a job, because the insensitivity around that kind of stuff can really harm your brand in an irreparable way. And we really need to be careful about the devil being in the details with some of these things that we're doing, because we are an activist space. We are a gatekeeper space, and we are very sensitive to being abused and misunderstood. And so we're watching.
And I think it ties in nicely with what you said about having that core mission. And that sets the culture and the tone too, is when you have that core mission, when you have those core values, and the company, therefore you're hiring accordingly. And that messaging is what the brand puts out, who you're hiring, who you're bringing on can be more consistent, because it is rooted in a culture and a mission that is aligned, that if these basically reduces the chances of these things happening. And if they do, they would be considered outliers. But there's a lot that you can do before that happens. And that is rooted at the top, at leadership, and the way they set the tone through how they communicate brand, mission, culture, and values, which then does translate to marketing and marketing messaging, product aside. So what are some of the ways that brands can do better in this space? Like, how do you take a mission, strengthen it, and make sure that your team knows and that your marketing team understands that message so that it can be communicated? Or if you don't have one, how do you start? Like, what would be your advice to brands that are just getting started or maybe haven't fleshed that out and are growing, where it is important to consider these culture aspects now?
So my question is always, you know, what brings you to cannabis? Because if you don't really have a story, I haven't seen many people succeed in the space who don't have a story, because this space is too volatile to not be extremely passionate about and want to give your entire life to. This is a mix of a passion project, a hobby, our social lives, our financial security, our career paths. This is not just a job or a vocation. This is something that you and I know for a fact, and most people watching, if you're in the cannabis industry, spend, you know, 50 to 70 hours a week focusing on this and really just going to sleep and eating in between. We don't ever sleep and don't take a break from this. So if you haven't fleshed out a why, I would seriously reconsider being in the space. We have a lot of brilliant people who you can work for and with, you know, who have a good story that resonates with you as you build your own story, if that hasn't come yet. But I think that for people who really want to have their own brand and have a brand voice, really having people at the table that are stakeholders. So if your brand is oriented towards young men and you only have, you know, older men on staff, you know, have a younger person on staff. If it's geared towards middle-aged women and there's no middle-aged women on staff, make sure that these people are kind of in the room helping make decisions, so that when things do come up and something is kind of off color or doesn't resonate, you'll hear in a safe space from someone who's your internal colleague and say, you know what? I have some friends that I don't think would like that very much. Or, oh, that reminds me of an ad from someone else that really like upset a bunch of people. And I don't feel comfortable being behind that. Or, oh, I have someone that I know who does PR. She's another woman in the industry that I've worked with, and bringing in other brilliance through having these networks that are not just the good old boys club, that continues to bring in people that look like people that are already in the space. I think that that's the most important thing that we can do, is really hire decision makers that have skin in the game, that have been a part of this movement and this culture since before it was an industry. And if you're not doing that, you're really leaving a big part of it behind.
Agreed. And so you're the Chief Impact Officer. And when we're talking about brands, brand values, culture, mission, all of that, part of that is the partnerships that you make and the way you sort of extend your hand to others in the industry. So can you talk a little bit about really what your role as Chief Impact Officer is and what it is you do? Like, what are those partnerships that you're making? And then how and why does that benefit marketing teams and the company as a whole?
Absolutely. So the most recent thing on my mind is Oklahoma City and Atlantic City. So one was an academic conference at a panel, or it was a panel at an academic conference at Stockton University. They allowed consumption on site. There were deans, provosts, and professors present.
At the university?
Yes.
Like consumption on campus?
Oh, I consumed on stage at an academic conference.
Oh my gosh.
They wanted me to teach about dabbing, so I did. And we had a full dab bar on the campus. So it's called Cannabis. I highly recommend it. So that was wild, being, kind of like being around all of these other movers and shakers in New Jersey that haven't been exposed to dabbing, haven't been exposed to the kind of hardware that we make on the, cartridge and disposable side. So, that always helps. Like, my moderator is a pharmacist who's also a cannabis business owner who's opening up a retailer. He was my moderator when I was dabbing on stage. We get off stage and he's like, I would love to carry your stuff when we open up. Little things like that just help, and we're not even doing it from a sales perspective. People just want to work with us. So Oklahoma, as we're doing these collection boxes for the recycling program, there's a little branded box that explains the mission. It explains where to find us. It allows you to drop it into a locked box to maintain compliance. And there's a little, a cheat sheet that shows you all the different elements that are inside of a vape pen, how they remove it, how they remediate it, upcycle it, recycle it, scrap it, and otherwise responsibly dispose of it. So we're able to not only do the right thing in that sense, but also educate people on what they don't know. Some people don't even think about their disposable objects being going into landfills. And so now you've made folks aware of something, and it sparks a conversation with them. And the bud tenders, the buyers are more conscious about the amount of cartridges that they're selling, the quality of the cartridges they're selling. Maybe brands have to up their cartridge standards because they want to make sure that the leaks and the failures go down, because they're continuing to see returns. That impacts the brand and the retailers. So really raising the bar on the side of, making sure that whatever does go out there works all the way through its life cycle and is able to be dropped off on, that's a promise that Icefire makes as far as, cartridges that come from our facilities, but we'll collect and recycle cartridges and disposables from anywhere. So it really just allows an opportunity for a dialogue around how we're, responsible for the things that we're consuming. And I don't know if that conversation is happening that often. And the response was overwhelming. I mean, I know in California, we've been talking about doing cartridge recycling since I got into the industry. I've been selling carts for almost 10 years now, and it's been the bane of our existence. Anyone who's socially or environmentally conscious, that it's not an ideal use and life cycle for a product. So I think that those are the kinds of conversations and relationships that we're starting. There's no other real cartridge hardware brands in the United States that show up at things and have conversations. So they might use some of these other big name brands, but they've never really met their rep. They're overseas and they don't have the same hours or the same language. And so to have that bond with legacy farmers and producers and say, hey, we got you, we're going to help you, launch this brand and customize everything, or to a retailer, like, we got you on really good terms, like really helping equity applicants with, really strong financial terms and making sure that they could get off the ground and really being friendly and financing things that otherwise wouldn't have a chance to move forward. So in every possible way that we can, we try to really bring the legacy and the people who brought this industry to the forefront into the fold so that they're not left behind.
So impact can mean a few different things as far as, helping out, educating in that academic sense, for you and the niche that Icefire is in, recycling and life cycle is obviously a big one, as well as encouraging partners and, those you work with to, help along the supply chain and the spectrum effectively in cannabis. I want to talk about the recycling part a little bit. What is Icefire's mission? Like, what is that core value? What is that mission for the company?
So ours is to bring premium life experiences to people. So we didn't want to limit it to cannabis. There's a lot of other interesting things that are being vaped in the world that we might want to get into. And so really it's just about raising the bar. That's why our whole new brand or our brand statement is this way up. It's aspirational. It's looking to the next thing. We've always been innovators. Our founder, who started Icefire Vape, was the first to patent the vertical coil vape pen in 2009. We have over 2,000 global patents and really created the basis for the sub-ohm coil, which creates the large vaporized smoke or the vapors that you've seen in the e-cig space. So we always consider ourselves innovators and pushing the line in disruptive tech. So for us, that could look like anything. So it's gone into the induction dab tools, it's gone into the hardware side and the batteries and the way that we ensure that there's really smart devices. We're moving into authentication and verification where there's actually RFID chips on each one that says the ideal heating temperature, and really making sure that everything from seed to sale is really responsible, GMP certified, ISO certified, manufacturing spaces to make sure that there's no, problems with manufacturer dust or, heavy metals coming into when people are doing their COAs. We're really looking at safety in everything that we're using, from the packaging and the packing, and the lightest footprint with logistics as well. So really, it's kind of something that we overlay onto every part of our business. When we talk about customer service, how we answer our DMs, we have a voice that we use. We use like a calm, but it's like we're the warm-hearted rebel with a cause. That's our voice. And so we have a little bit of edginess. We're fun because we're into dabbing and vaping and we're in the cannabis space. So there's that plug life, that nod to the yes, we are selling a controlled substance. But then there's that really like that patient, educational, not demeaning, not holier than thou, because that's how it could be in the dabbing space. It's very kind of top down, bro-y, like if kind of like the more obscure things, the better. There's like a little bit of elitism because we have seen a lot of harm in that space of people trying to come in and sell snake oil. So I think that's the biggest thing, is really reading on how are we making an impact in every single element, even just the way we treat internal employees, the way that we celebrate each other, the way that we support each other. I mean, I start every sales call every week with deep breathing exercises and a meditation, and we focus on one of the 4 agreements that we want to think about that week for ourselves. For folks who don't know, the 4 agreements are just kind of agreements to live by around, not taking things personally, always doing your best, being impeccable with your word. And, these are things that we're trying to do personally as humans in our company and for the industry and for the world. So going back to that concept of what are you baking into that DNA of your company? How do you guys talk to each other? How do you communicate with each other by, written communication? How are you celebrating each other's wins? How are you supporting each other through downfalls? This is a very roller coaster industry with a lot of sad stories. So the people that are the closest to each other, that have the strongest connections within the company, that really shines through when there's a disconnect internally. The voice gets watered down. There's not like this palpable beating heart of passion behind what's coming out. That's what helped us build Jetty Extracts. We were so passionate about the Shelter Project and giving away free cannabis to severely ill cancer patients, that no matter how crazy the internal politics got, we were like, we work for this. We know what good work we're doing. Hundreds of patients are getting free medicine this month. We can put all the petty, disagreements aside. We are doing God's work. This is an important thing that we're doing. We have an amazing impact on the world. And it kind of lets you zoom out and remember what the greater is, because this is not a normal business. This isn't just an insurance office that you could go work at another one, or, normal water cooler talk. Like, we need to come into this as if we were, working in a nursery with babies, like you want to have energetic hygiene and you want to treat everything as if it's precious, because we have one shot at doing this right. And we've seen so many times how it's been messed up. So it's on all of us as marketers to really help clean it up, because no one knows anything about us unless we're advertising it. We don't have a PSA or a PR company for the plant. No one's educating her on her behalf. It's the business owners that are doing it. The educators are not or the consumers are not self-educated. They wait for us to do demo days. They wait for us to put out podcasts. They wait for us to put out movies. We had ended up being the stewards of plant medicine education, but we happen to be business owners. So it's a big responsibility, and with great power comes, a lot of pressure. So don't mess it up.
Yeah.
Just be conscious. Be conscious. Don't do things unconsciously. Don't just take whatever you did in your last job and copy it and paste it here. It will not work. It's a different paradigm altogether, and you will get rocked. Some things are good, best practices from other places. Trust me, cannabis needs some best practices from other industries, around organization and data collection and things like that. But you really got to have your head on right. And this is not something that's going to be a get rich quick exit focus thing. If you're coming in it because you want to make money, this is not the place for you.
Yeah. So, and it's clear you know that mission really well at Icefire, and that it's, ingrained in all the things you do. So starting with the core values and those missions, and then those partnerships that you're making, and the way in which you handle your relationships with your distributors, all ties into this concept of having good messaging, good strong branding, but really a knowingness and a why for why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah. And then that can translate into all the content you produce. So whether it's marketing specific related content, like a social post or blog post, or something internal like your meetings, all of it is tied and related.
Exactly.
Would you like to connect with industry experts like Luna? Join the community at Cannabis Marketing Association and learn from hundreds of experienced cannabis marketing pros. CMA's extensive members-only content library includes dozens of webinars, tools, and downloadable resources for cannabis marketers. Attend twice-a-month workshops and masterminds, ask questions in the CMA Slack channel, and access exclusive member content and networking events, all included in your membership. Learn more at thecannabismarketingassociation.com or email info@marketingcannabis.org to connect with our team. Awesome. So I want to talk a little bit about some lessons you can take away from any adversity you faced in the industry. So we all know that, yes, it is a hard industry. A lot's changed, and it's a grind at times. But can you speak to some of those harder times, and specifically some lessons that you've learned? Because a lot of this makes sense in practice, but it's not until you really get your hands in there and start to stumble yourself that you're like, okay, now I get it. And I've had plenty of those myself. But any lessons or stories you want to share about either adversity you've faced or something you've tried and then learned from that has helped informed your approach today?
So I'll start from the lessons and go back kind of to the why. Be well capitalized, lawyer up. And by lawyer up, I mean a lawyer that specializes in contracts. Have a really strong blend of roots and suits on your team. So legacy people who understand the plant and know the people in the industry, and people who have really strong skills with, pro formas and financials and spreadsheets and all that things that, you typically, not always, but typically, legacy cannabis operators don't have, that level of training in some of these, financial expertise. So those are the biggest thing. What I've noticed is that people get into it with passion, and their passion drives them ahead of it being realistic. And they put themselves in really precarious situations where they have $100,000 and they invest it all into their packaging. And then the DCC changes the font size from 11 to 11.5, and you're screwed. There's $1 million a year being spent by companies just on holding on to a physical space and location while they're waiting for their licenses to be processed. So the kind of marketing spend, insurance spend, legal fees, just to even get a seat at the table to pitch your idea, is before your business is even on the ground running and your doors are open and you have product. So I hate to say it, it sounds very prohibitive. There's obviously some, unique social equity opportunities, but that's still very hard to get qualified for. And even if you do qualify for it, there's no capital. There's usually not that many deferred loans. There's not that many incentives, also no training on business. So you might be really excited. I find two things. I find the overexcited and underprepared. And by prepared, I mean capitalized, having lawyers, having a solid business plan that has proof of concept. That piece of it. Or you have people that are really well capitalized, have the lawyers, have the expertise, and have no idea what they're doing here, how they're going to be here. They discredit and discount the brilliance that's already existing in this space. They think that they can come in and do it better, like it's petroleum or alcohol or tobacco. And they have this really strong arrogance around being able to be successful because they've done it in other places. So you either have the blind optimist or just the entitled, well-capitalized person that just kind of had, historic success. So you kind of need to have both. You need to have people on your team that can draw in those resources so that you're not pulling last minute investment from your families at Thanksgiving to make it through to the end of the month to keep your lights on and your payroll going. It is a Schedule I drug. There is no necessarily plan or timeline for descheduling or rescheduling it. They're banning, they're trying to ban minor cannabinoids that are hemp derived, like Delta 8, that are psychoactive. Legalization in California was just tax, control, regulate, and it actually criminalized way more things than we ever had before. You could grow less plants in your backyard. An open joint is now considered an open container. The VA is now, being more punitive than they ever were. So we're actually rolling back in a lot of ways in all these different markets that I've been in. Everyone's saying that we're going back in time. We're going back as far as licensing caps, the people who have access to get licenses, the cronyism and the stuff that's happening around licenses on the back end. And also it's just hard to do business. You can't bank. You have no 280E, tax deductions for your payroll. You can't get people.
And marketing and advertising.
Anything that even touches the plan. Because you guys get your checks from marketing, from marketing companies. So good luck refinancing your house. Like if you are ready to literally be living like an outlaw and have every single institution from Facebook to your bank to the CHP telling you that what you're doing is wrong and you could lose everything for it, that's the kind of stomach that you have to be if you're going to be plant touching. Obviously, as an ancillary company, we have the benefit of not having to deal with that. We've still had our accounts shut down for accepting funds, but I can still, operate. We can still operate semi-normally, as far as normal, business write-offs. So that's something else to really think about is if you don't have that kind of capital, get really good at pitching. Reach out to Lisa or I. We have a lot of resources for helping you guys get a pitch deck together. We can look over your business plans and let you know, what's going on. But I worry, and this is not to discourage anyone. This is to save people. Ask people to really contemplate what they're willing to do to be in this space, because it is a marathon, not a sprint. And the people in your life have to be supportive of it. I have an amazing supportive partner that watched me transition from teaching into cannabis, and he watches the dogs when I'm at trade shows, and he's, has to hear me on calls all day. I'm rarely available for my family because I am on a crusade to legalize and normalize this plant across the world. And it's a real commitment that you have. And when you're in cannabis, you get kind of blacklisted from a lot of other industries. Like there's some people that wouldn't work with Redman and Snoop Dogg because they use cannabis in their songs and wouldn't not use it on stage. And they've had to say no to a lot of corporate sponsorships and things. So it does harm you in some ways and help you in other ways. Obviously, it's exciting to be in the space. Everyone wants to talk to the person in weed. I was just at my 20-year high school reunion. They're all fascinated by it. They're all excited by it. But I don't know if they would necessarily want to drop their kids off at my house. You know what I mean? Even though they trust me, they know I have a master's in teaching. I'm probably great with kids. There's something about you're a dabber. Like there's this underlying distrust of people in cannabis because it's still considered vice and it's still illegal. And until we deschedule or reschedule it, we are never going to be anything but the black sheep that have to be looking over our shoulders and making sure we're really smart and have really tight security cultures so we can cover our asses.
That's a good point. And so now that we've talked a little bit about adversity, what are some things that you've seen work from a marketing, advertising, or sales perspective? Because I know sales is a little bit more your lens, but what are some of the strategies you've seen that work that are either unique to cannabis or you've seen work from other industries or other verticals?
Networking. Everyone loves an event. Everyone loves stoner movie nights at the theater. Everyone loves weekly clubhouse meetings. Be present, own a space, be the person who does, we've rented out random places, mini golf places and motels with pools and throwing parties there. We've shown up at EDC. We've shown up at different places that have nothing to do with cannabis, and we do cannabis pop-ups. Be present, just show up, have that guerrilla marketing where if you hear something happening, get involved, be a sponsor at different events, shake hands. People will only recognize you and trust you if they really see you out on the ground and making an impact on people. That's what we've seen at Icefire for sure.
That's true. And I'll definitely validate that as far as this industry being very relationship driven and trust driven based on those relationships, where a lot of it is that hand to hand. Who do you refer? Who do you trust? Who do you work with? Because there are a lot of folks who kind of come in, try, it doesn't work for them, and then they leave. And, sometimes the clients they work with are kind of left holding the bag. So I would absolutely network that or validate that as far as networking and getting to know folks for sure. Okay, so what is one thing you wish that you knew about cannabis before you got in? Like what kind of took you by surprise once you got in?
I think all the things, it's actually kind of dovetails into what I was just saying about how hard it is. I think that we knew that regulation was going to put a squeeze on things, but I didn't realize that we would have 3 major extinction events that have left less than 10% of operators alive. So that's been the crazy.
Are you speaking of just California?
Just California.
And what are those events? Can you speak to that?
Well, the first one was when the first dive hit after when they found out that Prop 64 was happening. A lot of people kind of were scrambling to kind of get their stuff together and they couldn't in time. And then there was another one when Metric hit and people couldn't get fully compliant. So they were compliant as far as licensing, but they couldn't get compliant as far as their packaging. So there was another that was in July, the following year after it went into effect. And then we we're in our third one right now related to the general economic decline. And also we had a false spike during COVID of that people made projections on, built their businesses around. And it was just a spike and came right back down to pre-pandemic purchasing behaviors. So we're seeing the third major one now, but almost no one who I started out in the industry with is still standing. I've heard even just this week, epic, legendary, first to market brands with, clones in stores that were the number one clone company. They just became insolvent. They're going under. Labs are going under. This is just, when I say extinction event, I'm not trying to be dramatic. It's like the economic definition of mass closures due to overregulation, overtaxation, and incompetent control.
Yeah. And are you seeing a difference in California than some of the other states you visit or markets that you work in?
I would say we definitely are cool. We definitely export cool. We are the culture setters. We are, that like we're high vibe. We try to keep, healthy. We're outside. We're like the hiking kind of culture. Obviously there's, there's different kinds, but something that's unique to us, I think, is that California cool, that kind of LA surfer, Yosemite hiker, things that kind of, raise consciousness a little bit more. Like we call it Cali sober, people who just use cannabis and maybe some mushrooms or psychedelics, but not other substances, of just kind of speaking to, wanting to create peace and harmony, a little bit the softer side of cannabis. I think that, the growers, the regenerative, organic, outdoor cultivations that are sweeping Emerald Cup and all of the genetics that are being sold around the world to places that are winning, Amsterdam's High Times Cups. Those are all, US or, California genetics. A lot of Colorado cultivations that got started, those were all, California growers with their genetics going out there and helping them get set up. So we export a lot of our IP, a lot of our genetics, a lot of our culture. And really, Frenchie Cannoli, who lived here, he taught everyone how to make, temple balls and hash. And even if you're, not really traveling outside, people come to us, and we also share via media and music. And I think that that's the most special thing about us, is that no matter how regulations go, there's still not going to be a cultural capital for cannabis like California in the world. It's just never going to happen. We have, in my opinion, the best weather, wine, weed on the planet. And I've been to 40 plus countries. I've been to over 100 trade shows in the last year and a half. And it's
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of trade shows.
I know, it's wild.
And I was also curious, you mentioned this earlier about the differences between Northern California and Southern California. What are some of the things that you see? What's difference between those two markets, and can you make that tie to marketing and advertising? Like, are you seeing, answer that however you want, but like, what else are you seeing that's different as far as either how the brands are being positioned or being marketed?
Well, you've got a little bit of NorCal down in SoCal with the Woods dispensary that opened up in West Hollywood by Woody Harrelson and some other folks that feels very Northern California. And I say that because they only work with regenerative agriculture and small artisanal farms and brands that are women, people of color, or otherwise equity owned. They don't allow plastic displays. Everything's wood and moss and really beautifully curated. That's kind of more how it is in Northern California. It's more about sustainability, more about innovation, and a lot more loyal. I found that in LA, we call it kind of the custy market. It's kind of whatever's cool and flashy, whatever's trending on social media. There's not a lot of brand loyalty. There's a lot more tourism down there. So you got people coming in from Vegas, from San Diego, from Mexico, just kind of coming in, over the border and around other parts of Southern California, going into the LA cannabis scene. And really kind of, it's very much about the brand presence and the cachet and the hype, and is it catching on globally? Northern California is very much focused on more of that terroir and that appellation of origins, like where was it grown? If it was grown in Humboldt, you can't have Humboldt in your name or Mendocino in your name unless you're, completely produced out of there. Like, they've changed certain laws around that because people were hearkening to that cool that I was talking about and trying to leverage that in marketing, but they didn't have the soul. So I think that's a lot of it is, there's a lot more money, opportunity, and movement and volume happening in Southern California, a lot more excitement and buzz. NorCal is way more insular, way slower, way lower volume in a lot of ways, and lower basket sizes. But the conversations that we have up here, the consciousness of the general consumer, it's just a little crunchier. It's a little bit more conscious. They want to know the story. They care that it's, grown outdoors. Whereas down in Southern California, indoor is what's popular. Exotics is what's popular. Up here, it's more of what the effects are going to be, what the terpene profile is. They're not strain hunting as much in NorCal as you see in some of the Southern California shops. I might get some hate from Californians for saying this because I'm totally oversimplifying, but when I was working for Jetty Extracts, I managed both NorCal and SoCal, and literally even just the way you communicate with them, like buyers in NorCal would answer emails, buyers in SoCal, none of them would answer an email. These guys would get offended if you texted them late at night. These ones were texting me late at night. So this is just years of experience, and I love them both. It's just like, they're different speeds. And I think that they're both so special, and they couldn't operate without each other because NorCal brings down the product and SoCal sells it. SoCal is the plug, NorCal is the product. They have to work together, and they've worked together really beautifully in a lot of ways for over 2.5 decades. And so I'm really proud of our state as far as operators go. We've done the best. We've tried to jump through the hoops. We've given out our addresses. We've signed all the paperwork. We've given up our firstborn child and all of our savings accounts. We're trying to do it right. And it's been Metric and the DCC that's completely sabotaged us. So I know that we've done our best, and I'm extremely proud of all the operators in California in both traditional and regulated markets that are continuing to survive and get this medicine out to people despite really, really problematic regulations.
And what are some ways, we're coming up on our time here, but what are some ways in which brands can differentiate? So we know how crowded it is, we know how busy it is. How can you stand out in this space?
Elevate voices that matter and stories that matter. No one wants to see another picture of you smoking at the beach. Everyone smokes at the beach. Everyone gets it. It's fun to smoke at the beach. Like, maybe you guys organize a beach cleanup. Maybe you do something, like use the platform that you have in the community you have to do good. And I always say love is lucrative. You can do good and do good. You know what I mean? Like, you can do good and do really well, actually. So what I've noticed is the way that people work in this industry is by networking. So alliances, for example, the Fairchild events, the Flamingo Hotel said yes to our party after Hall of Flowers now they rescinded it because they're worried about consumption and things like that. They got together with an alliance of other people and made it in a new spot, like overnight. Like, we are just like the plant, we are a biodynamic being that works really well with other, beneficial plants, animals, and insects around us. And to try to imagine you're in a silo and not be part of an organization of, if you're in beverages, do that. If you're a woman in cannabis, join these beautiful women's organizations. There's a million I could name that are all badass and beautiful and really supportive of women growing in the industry. Show up and be a part of that, and show up early, help them set up, help them, or if you show up late, help them break down. If you show up and you really are really making an impact, that's what's gotten me so far in this space, is just being a genuinely good person who works for the plant first. I love Icefire. I love Jetty Extracts. I love the people that I've worked for. I have not a bad word to say about anyone I've worked for in the industry, but at the end of the day, I don't work for them. I work for the plant. I work for people, and they buoy me and support me to do that work with their support and their name. And that is the most important thing, right? You can have the dream, but you need the resources behind you. And so find the places that have those resources, that share your dream, and build with them, because it's a rocky road. And the more diversified your network is, when something pops up and happens, oh, I got a guy for that. Oh, I got a girl for that. I've got someone for each issue that I have, because I've been on the ground. I've seen them. I've talked to them about their dreams, about their struggles. I deeply listen to my clients and my colleagues and my cooperators. I don't call them competitors. It's cooperation. The other people around you, your cooperators, like what's the issues that you're seeing? How can I help you? And just be of service. Like, servant leadership is something that we are lacking in cannabis because of this survival mode, this fight or flight that doesn't put us in creative problem solving and support mode. So that's the biggest thing that I would say is reach out, do good work. Don't be afraid that it's off brand for you to do something social justice related. Everyone's looking for companies that are tied to a cause and a purpose right now. So if you're not doing it, you're actually already behind.
And Luna, what is any last piece of advice you would give cannabis marketers, our audience listening, as well as any contact information you want to share, whether it's website, social, either for yourself or Icefire?
Yeah, just something that I learned at the CMA summit that I went to, that you guys put on, which is still, I've been telling everyone, my favorite event I've been to, hands down. Like, not even BSing. It was such a beautiful summit. I learned so much. And one of the things I really learned was about on social media, like really moving away from these platforms that are blocking us into, the Twitter space, the LinkedIn space, the Discord space that are open, not using hashtags, things like that. Like, don't put all your eggs in the Instagram basket. That's something that I think is really important for all of us to think about, is how can we tell our stories on our own websites and lead people back to our products and our story and own that traffic, instead of just giving it up to Meta, who really doesn't want us on their platform. And they've made it very clear. I mean, I've been shadow banned for 4 years. You have to type out my whole name, which, speaking of which, is Luna_Stour. But yeah, you can find me at lunastour.com, geticefire.com, and I'm happy to be a resource for anyone watching. You can email me at luna@geticefire.com, or DM me, or hit up Lisa and we can hop on a call. I'm totally down to be of support. I want to make sure that all the pains that we've gone through and the landmines that we've located, you guys don't have to, navigate on your own, that we're really here to support you every step of the way, because we want you here and we want you to survive and thrive.
Luna, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story and these insights. I'm really excited to get this out to everybody. And you heard her. Please feel free to reach out as well. And thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Much love to you all. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Party Like a Marketer. Follow us on Instagram at Party Like a Marketer and on our website, thecannabismarketingassociation.com. Check out our website for more details and membership information. We'll see you next time.